Let's start with the first factor, the impact of Prashant Kishor, and try and make sense of the impact the Jan Swaraj Party could have. Now, the important thing for viewers to remember is that till the time PK and his party start registering a significant number of votes, it really makes not much of a material difference to what happens on the 14th. At the very least, PK's party needs to get more than 8% to start impacting the overall electoral fortune of the state. Maybe some localized impact, but on the pan-state basis, at least 8%. Anything less than that is really just one of the various players not making much of material impact. Now, the critical question with PK, and we'll see that in just a moment, is which alliance does the Jan Swaraj Party impact more? Is it hurting the Mahagathbandhan, the Muslim Yadav Saini combination more, or is it hurting the NDA more? That's the critical question. Whose votes is he taking, if at all? Now, just on a broad basis, cephalological estimates done by the NDTV electoral team suggest that at about 15% of the vote share, PK can start having a go at about 25 odd seats, somewhere in the late 20s. That is what is materially possible if his party gets about 15% of the vote share. At 18%, he could start getting more than 40 seats. And if that happens, that's when he becomes a very serious player. There's a lot of uncertainty, mystery around it, which is why we're putting it up straight in front. But remember, the BJP's hunch and their hope is this is all about pundits, it's all about the media. In the end, he will be a damn squib. So let's now take a look. For the first time, you'll see the kind of impact Prashant Kishor's party has at different vote shares. Okay, so we'll try and make sense of that. At about 8% of the vote share, and what you're seeing in the next column is the damage ratio. So if 45% of his votes come from the NDA and 55% come from the Mahagathbandhan, so if it's almost 50-50, 45-55, then the NDA, which when you adjust, remember in 2020, the Lok Jan Shakti Party contested separately. So if I just look at the current formations, add that to the data from 2020, give you an adjusted result, then it's 173 for the NDA, 69 for the Mahagathbandhan and 1 for the others. That's the baseline at which we start. Here, with 8% of the vote share, which is coming roughly equally from both formations, the NDA is very comfortably in the lead at 166, the Mahagathbandhan at 72. If Prashant Kishor's party gets 12% of the votes, and in this scenario, he's actually damaging the Gathbandhan more. 60% of his votes are coming from the Gathbandhan vote bank, 40% come from the NDA vote bank. In this case, it begins to get easier for the NDA, with the NDA tally being in this case 174 versus 55 for the Mahagathbandhan. If PK ends up at about 12% of the vote share and is divided, 30% comes from the NDA, 70% comes from the Mahagathbandhan. In this case, the NDA's tally then goes up to 187 with the Gathbandhan crashing to 42. So basically, there are two things to look at. One, what vote share does he end up with? Secondly, what is the damage ratio? Who is he damaging more? And in this first scenario, we've really looked at where he's damaging the Gathbandhan more. And in a moment from now, we'll start asking our experts who they expect PK will damage more, because the word on the street in Bihar is that the potential of him damaging the NDA is higher than that of the Gathbandhan, and we'll come to that in a moment. So let's now come to scenario 2, which is if the damage is more to the NDA. This is scenario 2. If the damage is more to the NDA, then how does this election turn? Here, 8% vote share, hypothetically for the Jan Swaraj Party, which comes 55% from the NDA, 45% from the Gathbandhan. Not much changes. The NDA still wins 166 versus 72. So if PK gets only 8% of the vote share, almost 50-50, the NDA is very comfortably placed. If PK's party goes up to 12% vote share, and this time 60% of the votes are coming from the NDA, 40% coming from the Mahagathbandhan, then the NDA tally starts to come down, 155. But remember, 123 is the magic mark. It's only if the NDA slips before 123 that they lose the election. Till then, okay, so it's irritating, it's problematic, but it's not a game changer. If PK's party gets 12% of the vote share, and this is in a ratio of 70-30, 70 coming from the NDA, 30 coming from the Mahagathbandhan, then the NDA tally comes down to 134. The Mahagathbandhan then is at 95. Still problematic. Maybe it's not a convincing victory, but it's a victory nonetheless, and that's all that matters. It is when PK's party starts moving into the 16%, 18% range, and there if 70% of the votes are coming from the NDA and only 30% from the Mahagathbandhan, that is where you then have a scenario where the NDA goes down to 114, the Mahagathbandhan at 104, and PK's party largely is the others. This is others, so broadly let's assume PK's party would be somewhere 20 plus in this scenario. It is if PK gets about 18% of the vote, and remember this is a new party in a very caste-driven state, so it's not easy for the Jan Swaraj party to go like is being depicted in scenario 2 and pick up 18% of the vote. But if that happens, then you got a scenario where the NDA tally can come down to 98, the Mahagathbandhan can be at 110, and that is problematic because that's the first scenario where the MGB actually goes ahead of the NDA. So that's a broad sense because there's been so much noise and fury, song and dance on the streets around the Jan Swaraj party. But what impact does it actually have and how does this translate into numbers, which is why we built that scenario analysis.